The recording is starting. So hello and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Mari Carmen Cifuentes from the Addison Public Library, and I'm here with my colleague Leslie Sirier. And we're happy that you've joined us tonight for a very special program, From the Page to Your Ears, an evening with Janina Edwards. Now, before we begin, I would like to mention we are in webinar mode, so your microphones and your cameras will be off, but we will have a question and answer period towards the end. So please feel free to put in your questions in the Zoom chat, or in if you're watching us on Facebook Live, and in the comment box, and we'll get to those at the end of the program. And then also at the end, we will share a list of audiobooks that the Addison Public Library has with Janina's performances for you to be able to check out. So if you give me one moment here, I did also want to invite you to join us for our upcoming programs. We're going to have this Thursday evening Dr. Ada Chen presenting a performance on Not Quite Asian Americans and the Others in the Era of the Pandemic and the Uprisings. And then we'll have some book discussions in June, The Searcher for June 8th, and Heavy by Kizzy Lehman on June 21st. Also, summer is just around the corner, and so is summer reading. And Addison Public Library is going to do something special for the first time this year. We're going to be giving away books and a tote, and also we're creating special reading experiences for you. So you can pre-register at our website for an alert, and then full registration and book pickup along with the goodies and the reading experience items will be available as of Tuesday, June 1st for pickup. And so we're very happy to have with us tonight Janina Edwards. Janina is a graduate of New York University Tisch School of the Arts. She recorded her first audiobook in 1987. And now, with more than 300 books under her belt, she excels at portraying authentic characters and voices the African diaspora in West Africa, Southern US, and the West Indies. Her audiobooks have won 6 Earphones Awards at last count, and also has had many Audie finalist nominations. Janina's voice can also be heard reading articles for the New York Times, the Rolling Stones, and also other magazines, including for Apple News. And with Janina, in conversation with her will be Heather Booth, sorry about that, who is the audio editor for the American Association's magazine Book List. And she's been with Book List since 2018. A librarian since 2002, Heather has been listening to audiobooks since they came as records in those little paper pockets and picture books. She enjoys reading young adult fiction, true crime, and complicated female characters. Leads a couple of Girl Scout troops, drinks a lot of coffee, and is trying to learn how to read. And so, welcome, Heather and Janina. And
thank you. So I'm so glad to be able to be in conversation with Janina tonight. She's going to treat us, it's quite a treat. If you've never seen an audiobook narrator narrate live, today is your lucky day. We're going to get to hear Janina narrate the beginning of The Wedding Date, which is the first in the Wedding Date series by Jasmine Guillory. Janina has narrated all of the books in the series. The 6th is coming out this summer. It's called While We Were Dating. And these are produced by Penguin Random House. So Janina, I'm going to mute myself, and all of our audience can enjoy the experience of seeing you do what you do.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Don't you have plans tonight? What are you doing here in San Francisco for the weekend anyway? He made a face. Wedding, She made a face back at him. Don't say it like it's a prison sentence. He slumped against the wall. If prison sentences lasted for a weekend, this one would qualify. Okay, fine. A prison in a cushy hotel, but still. She looked around at the dim, still elevator. Not so cushy right now. What's so terrible about this wedding? He threw his hands in the air. Let me count the ways. He held up one finger. One, it's my ex-girlfriend's wedding. Alexa winced. She'd been there. Ex's weddings were always a trial, even in the best circumstances. Second finger. Two, she's marrying one of my best friends from med school. Alexa covered her eyes. Okay, he maybe had a point. Were they? No. She wasn't cheating on me with him, but let's just say I wasn't particularly pleased about how it all happened, shall we? Ouch. Well, I understand why you... He held up a third finger. Three. She sat up straight. There's another one? A third finger. Oh, yes. He waved his middle finger in the air. As a matter of fact, this is the worst of the fingers. Three. I am a groomsman. She swung around and faced him, mouth wide open. Are you kidding me? A groomsman? What? Why? How? Yes, you are asking the important questions. The ones that Josh, Molly, and I all should have asked before this nightmare of a wedding weekend started. What and why indeed? What could have possibly inspired him to ask me to be a groomsman? Why would he do that? Why would she allow it? Why would I say yes? How did this happen? All of those questions should have been asked. And yet, here we all are. Oh my God, Drew, that's almost enough for me to give you some cheese. He patted her shoulder. Cheese? Well, if he let his hand linger there for a few more seconds, she would have given him a lot more than cheese. Alexa, I'm touched. I truly am. And then he waved another finger in the air. There's four. Oh, good Lord, what four? What could four possibly be? Are your divorced parents coming to the wedding with their spouses too or something? He laughed. No, but a good guess. What a nightmare that would be. No, four is that I am not only a groomsman in the wedding of my ex-girlfriend and former best friend, but I am a dateless groomsman in the wedding of my ex-girlfriend and former best friend. My date bailed on me at the last minute, so I'm going to look pathetic, and I'll probably get drunk and hit on a bridesmaid. The whole thing is going to be a nightmare. That's it.
Thank you so much. That was just absolutely wonderful.
I am transitioning outside of my booth, so ignore this.
So I'm sure Janina will tell us more about it when she comes back on, but we were getting to see her actual recording space. So now she's transitioning out of that space. I have listened to several of Janina's books, and it's just wonderful to me for me to hear her perform them live after hearing them recorded, because I mean, they're very similar. It's quite a skill, I think, for a narrator to be able to maintain characters and voices across the length of the book, but also then to be able to recreate it, you know, live here on demand. So how lucky are we? So Janina, welcome back. This looks like a more comfortable space to sit in.
Exactly.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you like about being an audiobook narrator? What are your favorite parts?
Right. So I think, yeah, it was mentioned, I went to NYU as an acting major, and I did not act in anything, which I think is hysterical. I'm a relatively shy person, and I was very intimidated by all that. So I say that to say that this is perfect for me. I get up, I go, I mean, I do leave the house, but I work from home. I worked from home before the pandemic, though you might sometimes record in a studio, a professional studio. Most of us have booths in our house. So I get up, I feed the cats, I go for a walk or whatever. And and I go into my box and I perform. So, you know, this is like the introvert's perfect space if you are a performer, but you get nervous. Again, it's not that I have sung in public, I do other things in public, but this is, I like to say, this is my stage, and I get to be all the roles in solo narration. It's funny how everything that's old is new again, because audiobooks increasingly are using different formats. So very often it is the traditional one-person storyteller telling the whole thing, acting all the parts, but you will have other books where you're literally doing one role, just like in a theater production, and you have other voices coming in, and we all record separately and the editors put that together. But the traditional is you are all the voices, you are all that. So you get to be the good guy and the bad guy, and I think that's the most fun, is I get to be all the parts. It's the most challenging part of it too, but it's also the most fun thing.
So that is something I've wondered about. So the last book of yours that you narrated that I listened to, I kept, there was one part in particular where I thought, oh, she is making a mistake here. If I was her friend, I would say, you've got it all wrong. So when you're narrating, when you're reading these characters and you come across something and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, why are you doing that? How do you distance your reaction as a reader from your performance as a narrator?
And my short answer to that is, that's where the acting comes in. You are a voice actor.
Yes.
So, you know, so you pointed out one thing. I read the book before I record it. I'm not, that's also where the acting comes in. Someone asked me in some other thing, I don't think it was you, but they were asking, well, you know, when something happens in the book, you know, how do you deal with it? And I was like, well, I know that's what's going to happen in the book because I've read it beforehand, which it's very important to do. You're going to encounter words, you're going to encounter things that you don't know anything, that I don't know anything about, that I'm going to need to research. And so I have to look up all those words. If I don't look them up, I will get what's called pickups later on. And so I might as well look them up now. It saves me time later. So I look up all the words I don't know. If it says somebody has a certain accent, I'm going to look for examples of that accent so I can do something. It's not that I'm going to do the perfect version of that accent, but it's got to be plausible and believable. I'll put it that way. Because again, I'm doing all the parts. So you don't want to get the Spanish accent perfect and then you mess up the rest of the book. You're trying to create a plausible, believable experience. But yeah, that's where the acting comes in. Because if I was reading a book and I finished that recording one day. Anyway, and the book is set in 1975, and we've already said when I did my first audiobook. So clearly I've been around for a little while. And I'll just say this, I was around in 1975, and the author said, and they put a Post-it on the wall. And I went, I don't think so. And I actually checked it, and they Post-its appeared in like 1980. And even when something appears, that doesn't mean like it was in widespread use. So I was like, yeah, that didn't happen. So when I read that part, I was like, just go with it, and just go with it, because that's what the author said. And there were a couple other things that there were a couple other phrases in that particular book. I mean, I'm curious about these things. So I looked up, in this case, I had not met the author. Sometimes I do get to know the author. In this case, I had not. And I was curious, like, does this person, are they that old? And I went to Amazon and looked at their profile. I was like, they're not that old. So there were some other things that to me that were anachronistic. And I was like, yeah, that phrasing, not so much something somebody would say then. I'll go with you because it's your book. But yeah, so that's where the acting comes in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which is why I can't do it. I want to sit her down and have a conversation of why she should make a different choice.
Well, there is that point too, because it's a recording, so I can stop the recording. I can walk the room and go, it wouldn't be like that. No. And then you go back in the booth and you go, oh.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about how, you get up, you leave, you do what you need to do, you come back, and as to the listener, it sounds seamless. Can you talk about how that happens, how you track the different characters and the different accents and ages and things like that?
Right. I'm going to give you I'm thinking about the name of our evening, which is From the Page to Your Ear. And this, so this will be a longer answer, but it will actually address what we said we're going to talk about today. So when I'm hired to do a book, which there's a number of different ways, but I have at this point enough of a relationship with different publishers that they generally reach out to me and they'll either say, hey, do you have space in your calendar? Or they'll say, could you send us an audition for this role? I'm not generally, thank you God, chasing publishers at this point, at this particular moment in time. So that's I'm blessed with work and I'm grateful for that. So anyway, I mainly look at my calendar, see if there are workable holes in that. I try not to record more than 4 or 5 hours a day because the quality of your voice starts to go, your eyes literally start to go. You can see I wear glasses already. So, you're deeply looking at that page and the words on the page, and you are doing a word for word recording. So if I make a mistake, I will get, again, what's called pickups of that sentence, and I'll have to send it back later. So you try to get it as good as you can the first time around. Anyway, so I look for those spaces in my calendar, not hopefully including my weekends. So I have times off to do things like normal human beings who don't talk to themselves in a box all day. And then I also, one of the things I personally do, if it's actually like a romance, I will do what I call a cuss count. And if I see, I won't necessarily not do it if it has cussing in it, but depending on how much of it there is, and I will consider, it's like, do I really want to say those particular words at this particular moment in my career? I don't have to, so I may or may not choose to. Anyway, so assuming I say yes, I take the book on. I have a production. I do two things. I have a calendar. I put all my books in for that month, saying when they're due, how long they are, if there's a director, and most of the time there's not a director, but if I have a director, and other important notes for me. And then I also have a spreadsheet. I'm a spreadsheet person, and it's my production schedule. And one column has what the book's name is, how many hours it is, what I'm being paid, how many hours I think it will take me to complete the project, including reading it beforehand, recording it, and who it's for, what the publisher's name is, and other important things, when it's due, blah, blah, blah. Done. Then I start reading the book. And as I go through the book, I use an app called I Annotate, which allows me to, on my iPad, which is what most narrators use. I've done this long enough to do it with paper. iPads are better. So on your iPad, I use an app called I Annotate. I highlight for me, in green, every new character when they first appear. And any words I don't know, I highlight in yellow. And I put them in a spreadsheet. And one page of the spreadsheet is the words I don't know. It's a column for the page number of the word itself, my personal phonetic spelling or for the word. So I will pull from Merriam-Webster, but if their spelling doesn't make sense in my head, I write it however I need to write it, because this is, the English police are not there. It just needs to make sense in my head. And then any notes about that, or actually I'll put a link to where I got that pronunciation from, so that when I'm working on the book, I can go to that link and hear it again and go, yeah, that's how you say that. And then the other page of the spreadsheet is the character list. And I have the name of the character, the vocal qualities of that character, and any notes about that character. I was talking with an author last week, Olivia Matthews, and she was like, how do you get all these voices? And I was like, well, you as author have told me what the voices should sound like and that's, again, another reason why you read the book. You've told me he's a big guy, and, so his voice, or what, you can make it whatever you want, but the author has told me what that voice is going to be. And within reason, I'm going to give as much as I can of the qualities they've said, and or the at least something that's complimentary, or again, plausible, that is not going to hurt my physical voice. So yeah, that's the most succinct way to say that. So anyway, so research, list. And if there's particular accents, I'm going to do research on those in particular. Depending on if it was like Russian or something, I might actually connect with a coach for that, so I can try to make sure I've got some feeling for that. That's not, again, gonna take you out of the story. I'll put it that way. I might not be able to do a perfect Russian accent, but all accents there's a lot of room in accents. People tend to say, well, this is the blah, blah, blah accent. There's actually a lot of room in that accent, in accents. People coming from different places, they have different educations. There are different places in their family and their terms of their generation and the depth of that accent. So there's a lot of space there. Anyway, so I might do some prep on that, in that way. And then I go into the booth. And in the booth, two things. So that list of characters, that list of the words, that's going to help me be consistent as I start to record. And the first day usually takes longer than the subsequent days because I'm playing with voices. I know what I said I was going to do, but then you kind of get into a groove and it's like, oh, wait, that's that voice right there. And so you'll take a snippet of that recording and you'll save it in a file so that it's like, oh, that's my perfect idea of what that particular character sounds like. So if I need to go back to that, I can listen to it again and go, yeah. And get back to that. Or another way people do it too, and this might be in my character list, is sometimes the author will give me a cheat sheet of what, this character is like. I'm trying to think of somebody now, Brad Pitt, something like that. And that's great. That gives me an immediate image of who that person might be. But let's say, because some writers are younger than me, they might give me, in fact, someone did for a book that I did, they mentioned Sons of Anarchy. And like, oh, it's just like Jack's blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, great. I don't watch the Sons of Anarchy. I don't know what that is. Fortunately, in the 21st century, I can go online. I can see episodes. I can watch the whole Sons of Anarchy if I want to. I watched about 2 episodes. I was like, okay. And of course, on YouTube, they have like the best of Jack's, whatever. So I looked at that and was like, oh, that's who he is. Well, for me, I did not do this, but for me, I might say, okay, that was the author's image of who that character is. But for me personally, maybe it's Clint Eastwood. It doesn't matter who it is. It just needs to be something that brings that character to life for me so that when I go in the booth, I'm like, and it's not that I'm going to be Clint, but maybe I have that posture or that bearing, and all of those things affect how you sound. So, so having those images that work for me personally, having those notes on each character, having those clips of what I think that character sounds like, they're going to help me. And in a case like Jasmine Guillory's books, which she's done a series and a lot of the same characters come back into play, those clips are really important because I did her last book last year this time. So being able to go back and say, okay, what did my notes say about this? Oh, right, I did this physicality for that character, or this was my ideal. That's really, really key. So anyway, and then the on the technical side, there's software that helps you record and keep this thing smooth between your breaks. What I just did for you guys is not how it works when you record in the booth. You do not do it perfectly. You probably get, if you're first starting for the day, you probably get maybe a couple of sentences out and then you make a mistake. And you'll stop the recording, you'll put the cursor where you want to start again, and it will pick up there and you'll continue on. And you just keep doing that for however long you're recording that day. And then you finish the book. I like to joke, there's a saying, how do you eat an elephant? One spoonful at a time. So in March, I think it was, I did a book that was 27 hours. That was all I did for March. That was all I did at 3 or 4 hours. I finished 2 or 3 hours a day for the whole month and got it done on time. But, you just pace yourself. And again, that's why that production calendar is very important. And yeah, so that's pretty much the process. I upload those recordings to the publisher, and they do their voodoo, and they I should say they listen to it. Actually, there's a QC person who has the script. They have the recordings. They listen to every word of it, and where I've made errors, they compile a list and they send it back to me and say, hey, this is where you made the mistakes. And I send back just those individual sentences recorded, and they plug those back in to the final recording, and then they do their voodoo. I get to be the talent. You have to have some technical knowledge, just like we all do. We're all here on the Zoom meeting, and that requires us to have a certain amount of technical expertise, but essentially they do their voodoo. All right, that is my very long-winded answer to your question, but I wanted to make sure that we at least did talk people through that process.
Well, it's such a fascinating process too, because I think a lot of people, I read to my children, I read out loud things, but what an audiobook narrator is doing is so much different from the incidental reading out loud that so many of us do. And I think it's just fascinating to see how it all comes together. And there's so many players, there's so many people that go into making it happen too. So I think
I have a comment though for you, and two things. One, when Mari put the thing about the summer reading program, Asia Citro and the Zoe and Sassafras books, c'est moi.
Yeah.
those are mine. Those were so fun. And there is one more coming out, I believe well, anyway, I'm supposed to record the next one in like August or something. Much looking forward to that. But those were so cool. And I know my child is on this call because I asked her to be. And I won't say it starts here, but part of when I began doing this, there, as was mentioned in your introduction, back in the days of yore, you had literal records, you had cassettes for a long time, then you started to have CDs, and finally it moved to these downloading the books. But way back then, they were just talking books. That's what they were called. There was no audiobook industry, and there certainly wasn't any audiobook training. There is now. You can find people who will coach you and take your money and do all kinds of things. But back then there was no training. So part of my quote training, I volunteered a lot with Services for the Blind, which American Foundation for the Blind, which is where I did my first books. That was where their service began. But I also read to my daughter, and and she can tell you it was deliberate and not deliberate. I enjoyed doing it, but every stuffed animal my child ever had a voice, and all the books that I read to her, I tended to do the voices. And again, true story, when she was in middle school, they were reading Their Eyes Were Watching God, which is an awesome book by Zora Neale Hurston. And I remember very well, she was reading this book, and it's written in Black dialect. The people in it are in Florida. They're supposed to be in Florida. And she was like, I don't understand this book. I don't know what they're saying. And I started reading it to her out loud. And she was like, oh, I get this. This is like Aunt Bert, and it's like, yeah, I mean, and I think the important thing there was that not only did she enjoy the book more, understand the book, and she knew what that written word equated to in her ear, but she also felt connected to it because she knew that Southern dialect, that's part of our family too. So anyway, yes.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic thing about audiobooks too, and just like you talked about the research that you do going into a narration, and how would many of us know? I mean, now we have more opportunities to engage with people from around the world, but hearing voices and hearing accents and hearing dialects from different parts of the global community is something that audiobooks lets us do on a real personal level. I think that's something that's so fascinating. My parents are on the call too, and my mother read to me. My dad did too. He's here too. But I feel like that's something that so many of us benefited from as children, being read to and hearing stories. And there's, I think, this idea that you outgrow that, but I don't think that we do. I think that when you hear, in an audiobook, when you're presented with an opportunity to listen to a story told, it's transfixing. And I think it's just so wonderful that we have so many new ways now of listening to audiobooks, constantly in our pockets.
And you didn't ask this, but I'll answer.
Yeah.
So, and I think that it's really important. People get into this sort of purist, or dare I say puritanical purist mode about audiobooks versus reading it or whatever, reading the literal page, or even ebook versus. And I think it's a case, it's both and. It's not either or. If you've enjoyed, I mean, yes, I'm sure if you're on this, you probably love books, or you love one of us and you're supporting us, but you probably love books too. And I'm sure we all had the experience of reading a book and then they make the movie and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe they took this out, or they did this, or they combined, but good news with the audiobook, we don't do that. Yes, there are when this industry first started taking off, they had more abridged books because they didn't think people would listen to a 12-hour book or whatever. And then they found out people will listen to all of that. So I say that to say that we do all of it. You get the whole thing. So you're not going to miss your characters. You might not agree with the voice sounding like X, but when I listen to books too, I enjoy them. So it's not just a case of me doing something I'm not, you know, I listen. I'm like the hair club for men. I'm a listener and a book narrator. And yeah, sometimes they'll be like, oh, that's an interesting vocal choice. But if I let them go, usually it works out. And if I really don't like what that particular narrator does, I can stop and I can pick up the page book. But it's not either or, it's both and. And just like if you were reading a play, or maybe I'll put it this way, I'll stick with a play. If you see Streetcar Named Desire, there's the play. You can go to the theater. You can also see it on TV. You can also see the movie. I mean, you might like one version better than the other. You could see it at different theaters around the country and they do different things with it. Some might make it a Black production, some might make it Latino, but you just get to see the various options and it just becomes that much more rich. It's not either or, it's both and.
Well, and just finding all those different opportunities offer new entry points to understanding the work and finding connection. Again, like you were saying, earlier. So you have narrated so many different kinds of books, everything from, children's picture books to romance and mystery and, the lives of, what was it? The Secret Lives of Church.
Church Ladies. That was
Church Ladies.
Yeah.
So short stories, nonfiction, heavy nonfiction, on a variety of topics. Are there types of books that when you get that job, you think, oh, this is going to give me life? Like, what are the things that really enrich you as a narrator?
Right. And when I'm offered time, again, I'm very blessed. I am. The timing just worked out that I call my career, there was part one and part deux. When I was at NYU was when shortly after NYU, there was when part one, and then life happened. I had my daughter, blah, blah, blah. And part deux happened to be, one of the reasons for the explosion of audiobooks is because of the digital age. They just went hand in hand. And that was around 2010, 2012. And that's when I jumped back into this. And so now when we're having this plethora of books, I just have happened to, have the talent, thank you, but also have the timing that I've ridden that wave. So these variety of books are offered to me, and my goal as a narrator, and I do have a goal, is to do good work. I really want to do good work, which is another reason for not doing more than say 4 or 5 hours of recording a day, because I want you to get the best performance out of me. I don't want to be, I want to give a great performance, and I can't do that if I'm like acting like I'm on a treadmill, so I try to keep it shorter. And I also try to take the books that excite me, and I like the variety. That just the fact that it is a variety keeps me excited about it. And then I'm saying yes to books. Somebody was trying, it may have been the list of questions you sent me. It was like, what book, what makes you most excited? It's usually the book that's next. And it's like, oh, that book's coming up. Ooh, 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 ooh. Or that author. There are, series books are very popular right now. And I get, as a reader, as a listener, I'm like, yeah, because I get hooked and I want to know what happens to the next character or whatever. But as a narrator, that if you do a good job, usually they ask you to do the next book. So I do authors that I like. And so I know another book I did recently was the Road to Rose Bend, which is not a Penguin Random House, but whatever. It is actually, I think it's Dreamscape. The next book in that series is this summer. But on my calendar, that infamous calendar of mine, there was a whole place in July going, Return to Rose Bend is coming in. I don't know exactly when it's coming, but it's coming in here. And I'm holding that spot because that gets me excited. I enjoyed that book. I liked the writer. I liked the writing. I liked the characters. And yeah, so I get excited about, I get excited just like the readers, like what's coming next. And I know before you. So, so, well,
Inside scoop.
yeah, so it's like, I know what happens next, so.
That's
So,
exciting.
so for me, I'm saying yes to the books that get me excited. There there are very few books that I'm doing right now that do not fall into that category. Sometimes you get in a series where maybe I started the first book before I had as many options as I do now. So you're doing this and you're like, yeah, I'll do that book. I'm not going to tell you which ones those are, but but you're the narrator, and I do want to eat, so you're going to keep doing those. But most of the books, 98% of the books I say yes to now are books I want to do, and I love the variety.
Do you find that you stagger books? Like, can you jump from one romance to the next, or does that not matter?
Yeah, that doesn't come into consideration. It's probably more about the length of the book, or the project. The long format journalism I've been doing that about 2 or 3 years now. And I really enjoy that because, I mentioned the 27-hour book in March. Most books are somewhere in that 8 to 10, 11, 12 hour range. Well, the articles are 2 hours for me to record. I mean, it might be 1 hour if it's for the New York, the New Yorker articles are long, but Rolling Stone or whatever, those are sizable links, but they're nowhere near like doing a full book. So for me as a narrator, it's like, hey, I've got a little 1 hour kids book, or I've got a long format journalism, and then I've got this really long, thing that I'm eating one spoon at a time. So that probably is more how I deal with scheduling than romance, blah blah. Although again, having done some really heavy cultural and whatever political material this past year, those romances are really important. I need something to end happily.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and they're that's something that I've really enjoyed about the genre fiction that you've performed, that they end happily. They are so engaging, but like you were saying, you're choosing the books, the projects that you're excited about. But on top of this enjoyment, we get something more, and so they're nice. They're a nice blend of escapism and
Right.
examining real people, lives that are very similar to the lives of some people that we might know. Hopefully not the murder mysteries so much. um so speaking of series narration, I think you might be best known for the Wedding Date series, because at least around here, they seem to be so popular in libraries around here. Can you talk about how that connection happened, and how what keeps bringing you back to the series?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was literally, it was, I want to say she was definitely one of the first series. Again, when I said yes to it, I didn't know it was a series. So I didn't say yes because, hey, this is going to keep me eating for the next couple of years. I said yes because it looked like a really cool book. I think the whatever they sent me was enough for me to get a sense of it. Well, I'll put it this way: usually, when you're offered a book, they'll give you some. They might link you to the Amazon description. They might have something else, or they may send me the script. If they haven't sent me the script, I usually ask for it because, again, I'm going to do that cuss count thing. And so I could read enough of it to say, this looks really juicy, and juicy in a, it's rich. I like the characters. It's fun. The scene I read is just playful and fun. So it's like, I think I'd like this. I'd like spending, if a book is like 10 hours long, it's going to take you about 20 hours to record. So again, the response should be, yeah, I want to spend 20 hours recording this book in addition to the whatever number of hours reading this book. That's the response I want to have. So it seemed like a good story. And in reading, as I read more of it, it was like, I liked the characters. I liked the issues that, in the case of that clip I read you, Drew is white and Alexa is Black. And I liked Jasmine is really good at bringing up actual issues that come up in these in relationships in general and interracial relationships in particular. And it rang true to me. It wasn't just, romances often will they'll come up with something that's a problem. Like you need to come up with something, in human relationships. She found some things that were actually, real, and dealt with them and brought us back to our happy ending. And I liked that. And then I guess however much later they said, hey, you want to do this other book? It's by Jasmine. I was like, oh, wait, this is a series. So again, if you've done a good job, they usually will come back to you and ask you to do the next one. And again, I really liked your books. And I think, let's see, there was the wedding date, then the proposal, then the wedding party, and then Royal Holiday, my daughter and I think we were already planning to go to London, and the main character, who is the mother of one of the other characters that we've been meeting along the way, she goes with her daughter to London, and she falls in love with somebody who happens to work for the Queen, and there are all these British accents, and she's in her 50s, and whatever. I was like, this is my book. This is my book. I am on the verge of coming out of my 50s on the opposite end, on the the older end of that very soon. But I was like, this is my book. I must do this book. And narrators we can get possessive about our authors in that way. So again, there's a lot of blessings in this for me, just how it's come along. But I was offered the book, and it seemed like a good book, and I said yes.
That's great. So I'm sorry, there's sirens happening here. So you and I had a conversation recently with another author. Do you often get a chance to meet the authors or talk to the authors before the recordings happen, or is that just kind of a lucky thing if it does happen?
Right. It depends. When certain publishers will say, I guess I don't know all about that end of it, what the author's discussion is with the publisher. All right. So with Penguin Random House, usually with Penguin Random House, they have a director, and the director will usually talk to the author versus me. And so they're kind of the author in personification for me. But if you're working through something like ACX, which is a online platform where the rights holder, which isn't always the author, is trying to get their work into audiobook format, the conversations I'm having are directly with the author in many cases. And then sometimes through other, I don't think it's bad for me to say this, Audible usually will say, when you are hired to do the book, this is the author or their agent's information. If you have questions about the text, reach out to them. So it depends on the publisher. And I did a lot of my very earliest work in Part 2 through ACX, and that really kind of, I developed a process of how I work with an author when I have that opportunity. And, as you can imagine, and when you're working with an author, it's a sensitive situation. This is their baby. They want it to be perfect. I want it to be perfect. And I have had authors I've worked with who had us, especially with a series, had the work moved into audiobook format, and they did not like what happened with it. And in fact, tell their fans, do not buy this or don't get this. And I very much want to make sure that that is not how the author feels about my work. So I try to listen to what they say and work with them to the best of my ability. But I if they're available to me, I definitely like to work with them and talk to them. And it's I worked with someone recently. I think this book will be coming out on Audible soon, but I don't think I can mention it yet. But we basically just had a geek fest. I mean, I'd read his book. Excuse me. It was an Audible original, and I had some questions about the book. It's a fantasy, basically, setting. So I'd read the book and I had questions, and you know, and I usually, when I start to talk to an author, I talk about the book. It's like, okay, this is what I saw. This is what I think that character's like. These are themes I saw. Is that what you meant? And he's like, oh yeah. And so we just end up geeking out on their book. And again, if you like books, and which to me, why would you do this for a living if you didn't like it,
Right.
you know? But you just get to me, it's like, they get, especially with that new work in his case, I think he said to me, other than his editor, I was the first one to read the book. So it's just like, I mean, it's like you're working with their precious child,
Yeah.
and you get to geek out. I mean, he actually, in that particular book, it mentioned at one point that the main character she was one of 13 brothers and sisters. You have to check out the book. Anyway, and then as I was doing my list, my spreadsheet, I was like, there's actually like 15 names here. And so when we talked, I was like, great book. I noticed there's actually like 15 brothers and sisters. And he was like, oh, and we went through together, and like on the spot, he's like, oh wait, we got to fix that. We're just going to kill off this character here. We're going to do that there. I was like, whoa, I'm in the room while it's happening. You know, so he figured, you know, he fixed the problem. But it was just working. It can be challenging working with authors, but it's also really cool. You know,
Yeah. It's just too bad you didn't get to the Post-it author before that one got there.
right. I thought about that. I was like, yeah, just let it go.
Yeah. Well, there are some questions that have come in. And so now is a great time if anybody watching has additional questions. Put them in the Q&A and we will get to them. So do you have a favorite character that you voiced so far?
I'm going to say no. Just, well, you know, I'll for the moment, for this conversation, I'll say it's Zoe and Sassafras. They're just so, it's a kid, those kids books. Zoe's the girl, Sassafras her cat. I have two cats who are being very nice and not joining us. But I feel like, again, that was one of those books I was like, I was meant to do this book. It's a little black girl who has a cat.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to do these books. So anyway, I will say Zoe and Sassafras until tomorrow when I'll say it's somebody else.
So that must be a totally different energy narrating children's books.
Yes. Well, that particular children's book, yes. I mean, it's really high energy, and come on, Zoe. I mean, come on, Sassafras, let's go. You know, and she's got all these crazy, I mean, all of her friends, she saves her mom. Oh, you'll have to, it's in the summer reading. Go read the book.
There'll be a link, so you guys will all be able to check that one out. Do you have a favorite book that you've always wished you could narrate, or thought, oh, if they want to reprint this one, this is, I sure wish they would offer it to me?
Again, we've established my age, sort of in a vein. I'm a big Sandra Kitt fan, who is a Black romance writer, and she did a lot of work in fact, I think, I'm maybe saying this wrong, but she was like Harlequin's first Black romance writer, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, I have all of her books, all of her paperback books, and big fan. And so I guess that was one of those writers like, God, I wish I could do her books. And I actually ended up doing, I think, 2 of them. So that happened a couple of years ago. But that was one of those writers that I was like, yeah. I mean, when they offered it to me, I was like, again, one of those, I was born to do Sandra Kitt's books. What do you mean, will I do her books? What do you mean you're giving some to somebody else? And I was like, anyway, Sandra Kitt, yeah.
Oh, that's really exciting. That's really neat.
I was so, when they said, it's like, would you like to? I said, yes, of course. You don't even know.
Right. Oh, how cool. I love this question. This is a great one. What is your favorite new word that you've come across in a book that you've read? It could be a real or a fake word.
No, I know what it is. I may not be able to say it right. I think it's synecdoche. It's like SYN. It came up.
I've seen that word written. Yeah.
I just narrated the book, All That She Carried, which is an awesome, wonderful book by Taya Miles. Wonderful Penguin Random House book. And in there, and in that case, I had a director, and we're both narrating, I'm talking, I was like, and blah, 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 so what? And I didn't there's always stuff you don't miss until you say it out loud. And that word had not caught my attention while I was reading it. And it was like, we have to look that up. I have never said that word before in my life. And I think I'm saying it right, synecdoche.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember what it means now anymore, but it's synecdoche.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's something that those of us who are readers, that happens frequently, where we read a book, we read the words, but we don't hear them spoken. And, there are all kinds of things like that.
Authors don't either. They're not always authors, for good or bad, aren't always the best person to ask how you say something, because they don't have to say it.
Right. That's a good point. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Another question. Do you sometimes choose books or lean toward books just because you think it would be a fun one? Like because the character would be fun to voice?
Yeah.
It sounds like Zoe and Sassafras would be.
I was going to say, yes. Zoe, aside from that, I was meant to do that book. But yeah, it was like, I am this little black girl and the cat, even as much as Zoe, but the cats.
Yeah.
I want to do the cats,
Yeah.
I was meant to meow. It's just like.
So I wonder now if her cat friends, if there's more than one cat, do the cats meow differently then? Do you voice it? Yeah.
There's only one cat in it so far.
So far, maybe the sequel.
But her friends are all they're all dragons and I can't think of them. They're all fantasy things.
Yeah.
So I had to come up with these different voices. There's a baby, not dinosaur, but baby dragon. Baby dragon. It's like, and he's supposed to have this voice that's big, but you can't pull out your microphone. And it's supposed to be, at one point he's supposed to echo his voice. He's so big that his voice creates a wind when he speaks.
Oh.
So I was like, okay, what's that? And I actually ran it by my daughter, and another friend was like, okay, how about this voice? What do you think about that voice? So yes.
Oh, that's fun. That would be fun. This is another good question. Do voice actors get typecast?
They can. Again, the majority of my books, not all of them, but the majority of my books are by, for, or about Black people. But beyond that, as you've mentioned, they've spanned everything. So my niche is very broad. Some voice actors have, I know, anyway, yes, it can happen, and we work hard not to do that. And that's one reason why and I should say this, you may get in a niche, you may be in a niche for different publishers in different ways. So even though one publisher like calls you up for all your country western whatever, maybe another publisher sees you as the go-to person for something else. So you may get in a niche, but it might be different by different publishers.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Do we have any other questions? So I'm wondering if you have go-to narrators that you really like to listen to when you're listening to audiobooks.
Yes, I do. And it's a combination. Well, I guess it goes back to that author. If you've done a good job, they tend to put you with the same narrator. But January Lavoie I love her. And again, we've established I'm a romance reader myself. I love Nora Roberts. I love she has like a sci-fi thing. I'm not into that. I like her straight up romances. There's usually something that's being figured out or whatever, but they're straight up romances. And January Lavoie has done several of those, and I love January Lavoie and Julia Whalen. They're awesome narrators. I love them. And I'm a big fan of Molly Harper books, which Amanda Ronconi does those, and they're just fun. Most of hers are like, just vampire. They're, this whole vampire supernatural thing that is happening right now. She does that kind of thing, but with snark, I think is her byline, and I really enjoy that. I like Simon Vance, who's also really, really well known. He got me through the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series, which I was very interested in reading that when it was really, really hot, and I couldn't make it through that. The first like 50 pages are all exposition. And I finally picked up the audiobook and Simon just got me through. It was like, and I got hooked. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of answered this other question about, is there a character or characteristics that you've had to grapple with? But yeah, a difficult book like that, I wonder if that's, or other characteristics. I'm not quite sure. Anthony, if you want to elaborate in the chat, maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what the difference is as a narrator when you're working in a full cast production?
It's actually not different because you aren't working with them. I mean, you know, it's like the publisher, you know, we all are working on our stuff in our various and sundry places. We record what we record, and it goes up to the great interweb and they do what they do and they put it together and it sounds like we're in the same room, but we're not. So I jokingly, but truthfully, this recently was, I worked on the final review of Opal and Nev. Which again, I was actually, my schedule was really tight and they were like, please do this. And I was like, okay, fine. Cause I read the thing and I was like, oh, this sounds pretty cool. It was extremely cool. But I didn't actually look at who else was on the project. Came to find out Robin Miles, who's also fabulous narrator, was on the project. I think, oh God, her name, Bonnie
Turpin.
She's on it. And I was like, oh, I mean, I didn't even know. You know? And then I found out that Andre de Shields was in it, who, if you don't know, Andre de Shields, just so we're clear, he was in the original cast, theater major, just so theater major. He was in the original cast of Ain't Misbehavin'. He was the Wiz in The Wiz in the original cast. And he was in the final review. And I was like, I was working with Andre de Shields. Oh my God, I didn't know him. And I was like, I mean, I've never met him. We may never meet, but I was like, but I worked, quote unquote, I worked with Andre. I had to, you know, I'm laughing at myself. I was like, I worked with Andre de Shields. We're in the same book. My voice is in the same book as him. So anyway,
Oh, that's really
what was the question?
Oh, working in a full cast.
Right. It's really not actually different. It's weird. It's different in the sense that, well, in that case, you know, all of my lines were still generally in a clump. I have worked on multi-narration titles where you have a line and somebody else does, but again, you're not with them. So you're acting. You have to act like, you know, you're having a conversation.
Yeah. If you're doing like just like a dual narration, often, you know, like a romance will have a male and a female character, the two romantic partners. Do you ever share notes with the other narrator about?
We do converse, whether, you know, we might email, whatever your, you know, particular thing is with that particular person, but we are in communication, I'll put it that way. We might share clips of the voices, and it's not that you're trying to do the voice they're doing, but you're trying to complement it. It needs to work. So, you know, if we agree that this person has an accent or they don't have an accent, or, you know, they just can hear what you're doing and kind of, however we do it, lean into what they're doing without imitating them, because that doesn't work either.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, so I, my role at the magazine is editing the reviews, and narrators or reviewers will often pick that up, that if it hasn't happened, well, you know, he has a French accent when he narrates, but she doesn't narrate him with a French accent, and, you know, these kinds of things. So it's listeners really appreciate that kind of continuity that you bring to your work. It's such a high caliber. So, well, we are approaching the end of our evening together. I think I'm so glad that we had this opportunity to talk with you. There's a list of your books that I think was that in the chat, Mari? Yes, Leslie added it to the chat a little bit up. So please do check out all of Janina's wonderful audiobooks. And here another. Oh, there it is again, down at the bottom. It's just fantastic. And then I think Mari has some closing comments, but round of applause, virtual applause for Janina and the lovely performance we got up top. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
My child. Thank you, Moshe Day.
Yes.
Danny for being there. I know she's there too. And Carla, hi. I can't look. I can't like do the chat and this. But I know I saw their names go by. So hi.
Yeah.
No, it's been such a treat. It's so fascinating. And, you know, I could just keep listening to you, in addition to the audiobooks that I'm always listening to. And as you know, Heather mentioned and Leslie shared, you can click that link, and then that will take you to audiobooks that are in our collection at the Addison Public Library that are all performed by Janina. Obviously, has many more. You can also go and in our catalog search Janina Edwards, and then you would also get that list of titles. And again, thank you very much for joining us. You can catch us, and if you want to go see the program again, it is available on Facebook Live and then also on our YouTube channel for the Addison Public Library. So again, thank you very much for sharing, and I've thoroughly enjoyed that. And there are many positive comments in the chat also about how fascinating this has been. It's, you know, that someone's sharing that they are always listening on their long commute, you know, and they completely transform their drive. And so, and thank you for all, you know, sharing, you know.
Thank you for asking me. Mari and I go way back. So thank you for asking.
It's lovely to have you, and to have our daughters watching as well. So.
That's right.
Okay. Well, again, everyone take care and have a good evening. We hope to see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Happy reading.
Bye.